If you are, for example, an inherently impatient person and you want to develop your patience, well, I can't sit down and teach you a class on how to be patient. It's not going to work. You have to decide, I want to learn my patience. I want to develop my patience. Then you have to put yourself into environments that test your patience, right?
You feel exhausted, but it's more than exhaustion. It's like this brain fog, and it's this moodiness, and it's these like there's all this other stuff going on besides just feeling tired. And that back and forth switch between using sugar for fuel and using fat for fuel is the magic of intermittent fasting.
So attributes, you said skills you can learn over time. You have the capacity to develop and improve upon your skill set. Attributes you're to a certain degree you're born with. Are you suggesting that they're immutable, that we can't develop attributes that we aren't born with, that we can't improve upon the attributes that we might already exhibit?
Right. I am absolutely not suggesting that. We can actually
Great. That's good news.
Yeah, we can totally improve. The difference is you can't do it the same way you can learn a skill. An attribute has to be developed. It has to be first of all, you have to be self-motivated. It has to be self-directed, and you also have to kind of decide to consciously put yourself into environments of discomfort so that you may test and develop that attribute. So if you are, for example, an inherently impatient person and you want to develop your patience, well, I can't sit down and teach you a class on how to be patient. It's not going to work. You have to decide, I want to learn my patience. I want to develop my patience. Then you have to put yourself into environments that test your patience, right? So it goes with any attribute. If you want to be more adaptable, if you want to be more resilient, if you want to be more disciplined, whatever it is, you have to do it yourself. But they can be developed. Yeah, they're not immutable, but it's your decision. There are some attributes you may not need to or want to develop, depending on your role in life, depending on what you're doing. I mean, I have leadership attributes. Not everybody is really a leader per se. I mean, we all have relationships, but maybe you're a comedian, right? It's kind of a self-directed profession, right? So you don't need to be a leader per se, or a great teammate. So there's some of those that you might not need to develop. It's really up to the individual.
I love that. So how did you then adapt these attributes that you identified in your, among your team members, and then sort of extrapolate out so that people from all different professions could basically benefit from them?
Well, I first thing I did was, when we did it for the team, we came up with 36. So the first thing I did was I looked at that list and said, okay, based on what I know now, which ones are more skilly than
Yeah.
they are attributey? So I took out those, and then I looked at, there were some that were distinctly designed for, I would say, good for SEAL team uh, uh, action, right? I mean, so each team, depending on
Was bloodlust one of the ones that
was
didn't
not-
make the cut?
I didn't explore that one, but honestly, if someone had bloodlust, I would probably deselect them because there needs to be that's a little bit too far. You need to, so the warrior profession, is something that I think, well, most of us think has to be taken very seriously. When you are really endowed with to put it bluntly, permission to take life, that is a responsibility that's very weighty, and if you don't consider that, and if you don't have the right mentality around that, you have problems. Some of those problems we've seen played out, because some of it becomes public, and we're like, yeah, that's a problem, right? When you're in war, you have to really be cognizant of that, and I think choosing the right people, and I think the selection process, whether it be SEAL selection process or any selection process, but the SEAL one is the one I'm most familiar with. I think they've done a great job, and they continue to do great work in trying to codify and understand what are those attributes you're looking for, and bloodlust certainly would not be one of them, right? So
That's really funny. I can already tell which ones have been beneficial to me as a sort of media entrepreneur author. Definitely grit. And we can sort of break these apart, which I love that you do in the book. I mean, it's so cool the way that you've organized this, but courage, perseverance, adaptability, resilience. I mean, these are all so important, especially today, especially in the year 2020. If there's anything that 2020 has proven us, is that shit can go sideways real quick.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
you need to have some degree of grit.
Yeah, you do. Grit is inherently human, and one of the things that was interesting for me in studying grit was that a lot of people think of grit as an attribute, and it's really not. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of things. And Angela Duckworth did a book on grit, which is a really good book, And she said kind of the same thing. It's a combination of different things that make up grit. I certainly took the optic from, okay, what are the attributes that make up grit, and tried to simplify and make it pretty elemental. But courage, I mean, courage is, so courage is interesting. It was a fascinating one for me, courage, because, that's, our mutual friend Andrew Huberman and I worked on this a lot together, because he studies it in the lab and I kind of experienced it in the field,
Hmm.
right? But the idea of what courage is that it is basically the ability to move into fear. Well, okay, what does that mean? Well, now we have to understand what fear is. Well, fear is actually interesting. Fear is actually the combination of two things. It's a combination of uncertainty plus anxiety, right? If you think about these two things in their singular versions, right? You can have anxiety without uncertainty. That's, I don't know, I'm nervous to do this podcast, right? But I'm not uncertain about it, right? I'm just, have some anxious, or I'm nervous to give a presentation at work. That's anxiety without uncertainty. Uncertainty without anxiety, well, that's every kid on Christmas Eve, right?
Hmm.
You combine the two and you begin to get fear, right? So
Hmm.
if you have both anxiety and uncertainty, that's when fear starts to emerge. Fear is in many ways a kind of an elemental unconscious response. It's your autonomic nervous system starting to ramp up, in some cases taking over, right? But you're certainly starting to teeter into the fight or flight response. Now the freeze response is in there too, but really scientifically what they've seen is the freeze response is really just a rapid oscillation between fight, or you're kind of trying to decide
Yeah.
between both, right?
Whether to fight or
Whether,
flee.
whether fight or flight. So what's interesting about the neuroscience around this is that they've discovered circuits that actually switch on with each of those responses. So if you fight, a certain circuit switches. If you flight, if you you flee, a certain circuit turns on. That circuit that turns on when you fight, and by fight we mean move into fear. It's not put up your dukes, right? Um, when you fight and that circuit goes, that's the courage switch. That's the courage circuit. You are switching on the courage circuit. You're moving into your fear. Once you do that, you actually get a hit of dopamine. You get rewarded because from an evolutionary perspective, we had to do this. Humans had to be encouraged to move out, to move on, to explore, to discover, find berries, find food, whatever. So we needed a system in our physiology that encouraged us to do this. So that's dopamine, right? So when we decide to move into our fear, we get a dopamine response. We are all predisposed with kind of a certain level at which our fear begins to set in, our autonomic response begins to kick in. If most of us are at like boiling point, like 212, right? We all know people who get afraid a lot faster, right? Maybe their boiling point is like 190, right? So they get afraid fast. There are other people who get afraid. It takes them a while, right? They
Hmm.
maybe at 230. This is like the Alex Honnold free solo, right? Where it takes a while to kick on that switch. Um, but the idea is once it kicks on, so that would indicate our level of courage as an attribute. The good news is we can decide to move into it, and when we move in, we get rewarded. The key thing about courage is that it cannot exist in the absence of fear. Fear has to be part of it. So, me, who's, and I talk about in the book being afraid of heights. I don't like heights, and so skydiving was always a challenge for me, but every time I moved into that, I'd get rewarded and encouraged me to do it. So we can actually work on that, and move through it and train ourselves to move through fear. The I would maintain, I don't want to speak, exclusively here or for the group, but I would maintain that one of the most powerful qualities of Navy SEALs or spec operators or even military folks is that not that they're fearless. It's that we've all designed our systems. We've practiced moving into fear habitually. We understand how to do it, and when we have to do it, we do it. And that's really the power behind a lot of people of service, whether it's a firefighter, a police officer, a surgeon or a nurse who's who are fighting the COVID battle. I mean, these are people who are consistently moving into fear,
Mm.
and that's both admirable, but also for me fascinating, you know. And so a lot of us had to actually work on our courage during 2020, but as an attribute, as a grit attribute, it's the first step, I think, in grit and the ability to kind of move into stress, anxiety, challenge.
I love that. I mean, few people listening to this are faced with physical danger,
Mhm.
on a day-to-day basis, the way that you and your teammates are. But is this essentially like a biological imperative to basically lean into parts of our life that evoke fear,
Yeah, fear and stress, right? I mean,
fear and stress?
stress by design causes us to take action. When we're hungry, our body starts feeling stressed, right? So it's our body saying, "Go get food." When we're lonely, our body feels stressed. That's our body saying, "Go find, companionship," right? So we've been designed naturally to move into well, we've been designed naturally for stress to cause us to move, right? And then we've also been designed so that when stress turns into fear, we're rewarded when we keep moving.
Hmm.
Now, again, it's not the reward when we necessarily get to the objective. It's taking every step, right? Every step we move, we get a reward. So we don't have to wait until we find the food at the other side of the mountain or whatever, or find the mate, right? Every step towards that. If you, the lonely guy who goes and talks to the girl in the supermarket who he finds attractive, he's going to get rewarded, at least from dopamine. He may not, he may not get rewarded by a phone number, but
Right.
you know, but that's
Story of my life.
yeah. But doing that, doing the action is a positive step, and it's evolutionary. It's designed by evolution.
I love that. My mother growing up always applauded courage in my house,
Yeah,
whether it was taking a test or going in for a medical procedure or getting a dental filling or something like that. She always identified when either me or my two younger brothers were exhibiting courage, and she would praise us
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
And I definitely credit her. I mean, regular listeners of my podcast, people who know my work know that, much of my work has been not just motivated by her, but it's been sort of just a constant practice of like, moving into areas um, where, it's sort of been uncomfortable for me.
yeah,
And I've just sort of like went in that direction.
yeah. And it's uncertain, right? I mean, uncertainty typically is going to come with anxiety. Human beings don't like uncertainty. Again, Christmas Eve is just one example where it doesn't, anxiety might not be additive to that. But typically when you're moving into uncertainty, there's anxiety with that. And so yeah, if we set up an environment where we're adding to the rewards of moving in. One of the best pieces of advice, and I named it, it became the name of the first chapter, the courage chapter. One of the best pieces of advice a senior officer once told me was to beware the fearless leader,
Hmm.
because he'll likely get you killed, right?
Wow.
Because if you have a leader who shows no fear, then that person is not effectively managing risk, because fear is designed to make us stop, make us think, make us contemplate, and decide to either move into it or flee. Sometimes flee is the right answer. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it is. We're not supposed to fight a bear, but yeah, that's you have to. Anybody well, I would maintain anybody who purports to be fearless is lying. But if you actually see that type of behavior, I'd probably keep a distance.
There was that amazing scene in one of my favorite movies of all time, The Dark Knight Rises. I'm a
Oh,
huge
yes.
fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. It's
Yeah.
like one of my favorite. I mean, I just like obsessed. And when Bruce Wayne is stuck in the pit in wherever on Earth that pit happens to be, Bane puts him there after he breaks his back. The prisoner who he's imprisoned with, his prison mate,
Hmm.
is asking him like, when he's going to take the leap, when he's going to like try to get out of the thing. And Bruce Wayne keeps saying that he's like not afraid of death. He has no fear of death. And his prison mate says, well, that's your problem.
Right.
You have to fear death, and then you
Yeah.
have to harness that fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the best music. So, by the way, I listened to that specific soundtrack. It's that part. I think it's called "The Climb" or
Yeah,
Why do we fall? Is
Yes.
the music, right? It's beautiful because it's like, yeah, it's just that's exactly it. You need, we are designed to fight faster, to move stronger, to survive. If we have fear, if you have no fear, that's dangerous. So
Yeah, you need fear.
yeah.
I love the mental acuity section. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So mental acuity was probably the one that I focused on the most when I was running the SEAL training
Hmm.
piece, because again, we were dealing with guys who were very experienced, and we are putting them through training scenarios. And when one particular one is close quarter combat, which is really the act of clearing a room or building. So you run into a building, you have to clear it. Either you're finding someone you have to grab or save. But the idea is you have to go room by room. Police officers do that when they have to go and take down a house or find a bad guy. But that's the sequence of close quarter combats, or CQC, is actually very dynamic and very uh, unpredictable. In other words, it's constantly changing, right? No no run is kind of no run is ever the same, and it's all a matter of you as an individual adjusting rapidly to your teammates in a very dynamic, and in the case of live fire, could be deadly, scenario or environment. And so mental acuity attributes became really something I focused on because it's really about how the brain works and how the brain processes our environment. So it's four of them. It starts with situational awareness. So how aware are we of everything that's coming in? So we get 11 million bits of information a second
A
through all,
second.
yeah, through all of our senses, right? And that's all five. I guess six if we if we want to get a little bit more into it. Um, but our logical, our frontal lobe really only processes I think 2,500 or 3,000 of that, right? So
Hmm.
so there's a lot happening that we're not noticing. Well, excuse me, we're 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 noticing, our senses are noticing, but we're not putting attention to it. Like, we can say that, right now you're not noticing the bottom of your feet in your shoes, right? Until I just told you. Now you're
Right.
noticing it, right?
Now
So,
I am.
but for a while there we weren't, right? So situation awareness is your ability to take in that information and actively say process it in the way that's okay. I noticed this. I noticed that. In a word, it's kind of vigilance. So higher vigilant people or hyper vigilant people will notice a lot of things. I was always this way, but I've certainly hyper developed this in my career. Right. I'm the type of person who, when I walk down a street in New York City, I'm noticing people. I'm noticing their hands. I'm noticing dark alleys. I'm noticing doorways. I'm noticing traffic coming at me. Right. I'm noticing a lot of things. You can be overly vigilant, that's too much. That becomes stressful, right? But situational awareness in short is your ability to take in information. Once you take in that information, you now have to compartmentalize it to effectively operate. And that's based on, okay, what is my objective at this moment? And what in this mass of incoming information can I use to effectively achieve my objective? So this would be, I kind of use this example in the book, but this would be, I'm at an airport and I'm late for my flight. Okay. And I'm running through the gates, right? There's a lot of information around me, right? I can see the Chili's, I can see the bathrooms, I can see the board, I can see the gate numbers. Out of everything that I can see, everything I'm taking in, I can hear the announcement, right? Everything I'm taking in, what do I need to focus on right now? Well, I need to focus on finding my gate, right? So compartmentalization is immediately taking it in, assessing it, prioritizing it. Okay, out of everything I'm just noticing, I don't need to know about the Chili's. I don't need to know about the bathrooms. I don't need to know about the flight board because that's, I have to find my way in there anyway. What I'm going to focus on is the gate signs, right? So
Mhm.
assessing, prioritizing. Okay, I'm gonna focus on the gate size, and then focusing. Now I'm gonna focus on this and move towards. That is compartmentalization. Now that's kind of buttressed and assisted by task switching, which is kind of the next phase. Task switching is our ability to come out of one focus and into another. So this happens all the time naturally, right? If you're driving a car and you park it and you, so let me back up. Inside of certain contexts, there's task switching. So while we're driving a car, we're task switching, right? I'm focusing on the road at one point. I'm pushing the brake. I might be playing with the radio. Hopefully, I'm not on my phone, right? I'm
Hopefully.
putting my blinker on. That you're task switching within a context. Then you have task switching outside context, right? I park the car. I'm walking into the supermarket, right? Well, now I'm task switched I'm walking in a parking lot, which takes another set of vigilance, right? Another set of prioritization because I got to look at parked cars or moving cars. Then I move into the supermarket and now it switches again, right? So that's task switching. So our ability to task switch effectively speaks to our level of task switching as an attribute. We of course all have it. Some of us are better at it and some of us are not so good at it. Some people, you might be someone who, when you get focused into something, very hard for you to switch your attention, really hard to come out and switch.
Yeah.
Um, Other people switch too fast, right?
Hmm.
This might be attention deficit could be like the far end of this, where it's like constant switching. You can't focus on anything, right? So task switching is something we'll all do. Your ability to do it efficiently, effectively speaks to your level of task switching. And then, of course, learnability is the last one because you have to be able to process and learn all these things. So if you have a high level of learnability, then you're processing things that are coming in. You're not making the same mistakes. You're learning. Okay, last time I did that, it went into my hippocampus. Now I remember it, right? And I won't do the same thing again. So when we're in dynamic environments, our ability to kind of move through those cycles efficiently, effectively, starts speaking to each of these attributes. That section of the book is probably the only section where the attributes are very much um, synergized and intertwined, right? In other words, you can talk about courage in grit, and you can talk about discipline in drive. When you're in the act of being driven, right? Courage actually, you can use some courage, right? So those can be kind of segmented, but the mental acuity attributes actually all relate and they're intertwined because it's all about how your brain processes the world.
There's like overlap.
Overlap.
You said earlier that one way to boost your efficacy in each of these attributes is to kind of lean into the the attributes where you may not be as effective.
Right.
So would you say that something like situational awareness, like how would you improve if you're not the most situationally aware person?
Yeah. First thing I would recommend is take off the headphones and put away the iPhone,
Hmm.
right? And pay attention to your environment, right? First of all, it's beautiful usually. I mean, because that the world is. Um, I do this as someone who's vigilant. I put myself. I love walking in New York City. Well, of course, I'm waiting for New York City to get back where it was, right? But pre-COVID, when we had a bunch of people walking around the subways, I love the subway system, and it's because it exercises all these mental acuity attributes for me
Hmm.
because it's highly dynamic. There's a lot going on. I have to process information, I have to prioritize, I have to act, and it's thoroughly confusing, you know. So I would say, as an individual who wants to exercise them, just put yourself into environments that that allow you to notice things. Now, it could be as simple as, hey, next time you're running in the woods, don't listen to music. Don't turn on your stopwatch. Just notice. Take time to notice. Be present. Meditation. Their meditation practice is all about this, right? Be present in your moment, right? When it comes to compartmentalization, you can start thinking about, okay, what is it that I want to what is my objective in this moment? Okay. Based on that objective, if it might not be as kind of drastic as, I got to find my gate because I'm late for my flight, but it might be, hey, I want to find the local library, whatever that is. Okay, as I'm driving, what are the things I need to notice to help me with that objective and prioritize that way? And then task switching is it happens quite naturally. I think the best thing about the best way to effectively manage your task. Well, you can develop your task switching by doing it more effectively inside whatever context you're looking for. So it's effective when you're developing it. So I have an objective, so I'm going to task switch. So let me give you the airport example. I'm going to look for my gate. As I'm focusing on those gate numbers, I'm also paying attention to the announcements, right? The announcement, and then I hear an announcement say, "Hey, flight whatever is delayed." Well, now I can task switch, right? Because I just heard my flight was delayed. I can say, okay, well now I'm going to focus on Chili's because I'm hungry or want a beer or whatever. So
Hmm.
the problem with task switching is most of us task switch too much, and because of these devices that we have in our pockets, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these mobile phones are literally contact. They're boxes of different contexts, right? So when you go from having this conversation, you and I having a conversation, to my phone texting and beeping me, and I make that switch, that's like cognitively leaping from a library to a soccer field, right? My brain has to do the work, and it's been proven that it takes a while to get fully into that next context, especially to leap back, right?
Mm.
So we're actually forcing ourselves oftentimes to context switch when we actually shouldn't be. And by the way, that's exhausting. Our brains only run on about 40 watts of power, right? So when we're constantly asking it to task switch, when it's really not necessary to, well, we're going to be exhausted. This is one of the reasons why these devices are kind of exhausting us, but it's also why we're finding that the connection is not happening as well because we're allowing ourselves to get ripped out of context when we shouldn't be, because we have a beep, even a beep, by the way, even if I heard my phone beep right now and I decided not to, well, I'm talking to you, so I'm like, that's still it's a mental leap, right? So see, even these alerts, people's like, well, I won't look at my phone. I'll just hear the alert. Well, the alert is a shift in context as well. So be careful.
There was a very interesting study that came out. I think I cite it in my book, Genius Foods. No, sorry, The Genius Life, where researchers found that just having a smartphone like on the table next to you exerts sort of a I love the way they put it in the study. I remember it because I thought it was so beautifully put. It exerts a gravitational pull
Yeah.
on one's attention.
Yes. Well,
Just having the phone in your
yeah.
proximity.
Well, and worse yet, so if you and I are talking, if we started this conversation and right beforehand I put my phone on the table, who would you think my priority is? What would you think my priority is?
Well, it's probably not 100% me. It's probably
it's
like
probably not the 100%. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly right. So you are in effect, by leaving your phone, even if you're having a dinner with someone, by putting your phone in a visible way, you're actually sending a message, and the message is you're not as important as, well, I would say you're not the only thing that's important right now, right?
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty powerful subconscious message versus I'm going to put this away, right? And this is it. I'm going to focus on you right now. So it can inhibit human relationship too, just by putting a phone on a table in front of you because it's just not showing. It's not sending the right subconscious message.
I love that. I'm loving talking to you. I guess, a question that has arisen over the past 40 minutes or so is the goal for people reading this to basically improve their attributes across the board, across all 25 of these attributes, or is it to find the attributes where they currently excel and then to sort of orient their lives around those attributes?
Yeah, I think it's probably it's more general than that. It's really to figure out where you stand and figure out what you want to do.
Hmm.
There is certainly a strength to understanding. So I'm kind of it's kind of this analogy is like to if you want to tweak your engine, the engine of your car, you want to put a bunch of sexy stuff on it. The first thing you better do is probably learn the engine, right? Because you start stacking things on this engine without knowing the engine, things are gonna things are gonna probably start blowing up or whatever, right? I think it's the same thing with us as humans, and we have so much out there right now that purports to make you better if you do this thing or do that thing or stack this or try this technique. And there's nothing wrong with any of them. I think a lot of them actually have a lot of efficacy. But if we don't know ourselves first, then how do we know what to stack? Right? Maybe nitrous oxide is not what my engine needs right now, right? So I think my goal for the book is someone to read it and first understand themselves. What does their own unique palette look like? And then from that point, say, okay, based on what I'd like to do or what I'm doing, what are those attributes that I would like to develop or I have enough of, or like to, I don't think you need to mute attributes, but maybe you do. Maybe narcissism needs to be muted. Um, what do I need to do to maximize my performance? And I think that's the goal. One of the things that we're offering on the website is a free assessment tool. So you go to the website, you can take an assessment for your grit attributes, your drive attributes, and your mental acuity attributes to see where you stand on these things. And it's based on a collection of data of about 1,000 people over, around the world, really. So based on grit, okay, where do I compare to 1,000 people? So it's designed to give the user a snapshot of where they might sit, and then ask them, and then read the book, and then say, okay, where do I actually sit on this based on my assessment, based on the book? Okay, what do I want to improve? And if I say, you know what, maybe I do need a little bit more empathy. Okay, how do I develop empathy? Right. And I'm also put stuff on the site to help people develop that too, if you want to develop each attribute.
What's the website?
The website is theattributes.com. Yeah, pretty
Theattributes.com.
simple.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. It's really, there's no, I'm really fascinated with human potential, and human potential is what could be, right? But to reach what could be, we have to understand where we sit first, because what my could be is different than what your could be is, right? So I think it's really important for people to understand where they sit. Introspective, kind of self-analysis. Where do I sit? How do I show up to the game? What do I have? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Okay, with that, how do I then, start marching towards my potential?
You mentioned that narcissism is an attribute.
I feel like I've figured out what my body is, my fuel, what that is for me personally. And I switch it up here and there, but there's kind of the primaries that stick around. So I feel like that's a big part of really getting those energies, is to get to understand what works for Max, what works for Crosby and everybody else, and having like those primary foods around often, and then keeping it kind of the variables around as well here and there, and understanding seasonally what's in, what's out. I think those are like big kind of keys for getting energy from food, and then obviously working on your digestion and
Yeah.
your lung capacity, because really how we get energy is either through breaking down food and absorbing and using those nutrients through digestion and the food we eat, or do you have issues with getting air? Do you have like asthma or issues with your lungs, or whatever that is, because that's the other way we get energy, right? So through oxygen. So like being able to master both of those really over time has gotten me to a point where now I just feel great the time I want to feel great, and then I'm actually ready for bed too when I want. It's not like I'm still like zapping with energy at 10 o'clock. I'm ready to go to bed. So finding that like balance, and understanding also like your I feel like everybody's kind of also different in their sleep schedules. So like understanding what works for you there. It's all very interesting. I mean, there's so many people that have come up with so many theories on how this all works, but for me, like I know what it is now. And I think that you've kind of like keyed in on your stuff too. I feel like we're also different in a way where you're like, I envy your ability to absorb mentally because I feel like you're just so smart and everything. Like you'll rattle off things that I'm like, oh shit, it sounds like you're talking right out of a book, but it's just in your brain. And you've figured out how to like utilize, absorb that energy from a book or something that you've read, and it just like sticks in there.
Yeah.
And you can just rattle it off like it's straight out of your notes out of a phone. You know, it's crazy.
Well, I love to hear you say that. I mean, I guess I have like a bit of a photographic memory for specifically the things that I'm passionate about.
Mhm.
You know, my incentive is my passion. You know,
Yeah.
so when I'm able to remember things, it makes me feel good. It's like one of the great joys of my life. But my brain definitely does not work that way. In fact, it works the opposite for most other things like sports. You know, like honestly, sport, like anything sports related.
Yeah. Well, you also didn't grow up playing them.
Yeah.
So that, you know,
There you
puts you
go.
at a disadvantage
Like-
at 30 something, you know, you're like, oh, let me figure out how to play basketball now. It's harder. It's like me trying to figure, I went to Canada, my girlfriend, and went skiing for the first time. And I felt like an 80-year-old man because that's nothing that I've ever done. I was on skates for the first time on the ice on a pond, nothing to hold on to. There's these little kids, they're like 3-4 years old, like literally skating circles around me. And I'm standing there. She let go of my hand and I'm like trying to create my own momentum. And I couldn't. And it's like, I'm an athlete. I played football in college. Like I grew up playing sports, but I didn't play like extreme sports or snow sports, like nothing on the ice, no skiing, nothing. Like I didn't do any of that. So it's just foreign. If you try to pick it up later in life, it's just like a weird,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like it's nothing to feel ashamed about. It's just like, I would feel strange too if I never played basketball or football and all of a sudden somebody's like, hey, let's go play catch. And you're like, I don't know how to throw this thing. You know, it's just strange. So repetition is obviously, consistency and repetition is obviously key when it comes to really anything.
Yeah, you're right. Let's talk about what Crosby Taylor. I like referring to you in the
Wait,
third
first,
person.
are you going to eat these or?
Should we try them now?
Yeah, you might as
All right,
well.
let's do
I
them.
mean,
Let's
they're
do
just sitting here, and
They
I
look
feel like the chocolate frosting is going to melt at some point. Or
Oh man,
it's pretty dense. I don't think it will, but
well. Okay, so if you guys are just listening to this, apologies,
just yank it.
but yank it. Okay. But yeah, so Crosby brought in these amazing desserts that
There
he
you go.
created, and one of them was sort of like a collab. Can I call it that between us?
Definitely a collab. Yeah.
Yeah, so I gave Crosby the ingredients that I wanted to use, and he created this amazing chocolate cake recipe. And the recipe is gonna go up on my Instagram page, but it's a collab between me and Crosby. And so
There's a really awesome podcast with Chad Ochocinco. He's a football player. He's got this hilarious podcast with a couple other guys, and he's talking to, I forgot what football player he's talking to, but he's talking about like, oh, I'm gonna be your nutritionist. Like, this is what we're gonna do. Yada yada. This is exactly what we're gonna do, and I'm gonna turn you into like an amazing athlete. And the guy's like, okay, I want to hear it. Like, what are we gonna do during the day? And he's like, breakfast, we're going to McDonald's. We're having pancakes, sausage. Like, he just goes off on all this stuff. And at the end, he talks about, and for dessert, yellow cake, chocolate icing.
oh damn, so that's
so
what we
that
got.
actually also inspired me to make this cake because it's such a funny line, and we'll have to find it and put it on like something because it's so funny.
yeah, we'll get our video editor
Yeah, it's
to
so
throw
funny.
that in. So I'm gonna taste this. You guys can actually watch this on I mean, if you're interested in watching this, you can watch it on my YouTube channel.
Damn, that's so much icing. I didn't realize how much icing. That's a good ratio.
Is it a good ratio?
Yeah, show that to the camera.
All right.
It's strong.
I don't know. I'm assuming
Yeah, you can't really
ability
see.
to zoom in. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're here. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. There's the cake. And I'm gonna taste it.
Oh no, look at that. Rich.
Mm. Wow, it's so rich. And it has like that mouthfeel of when there's like sugar in it.
Mm.
You know, it's like kind of crunchy.
I love this.
So good. Wow.
Cake. I love this cake recipe. The cake part
So
of it.
moist.
It's so moist. I was doing just like normal. I've been making cake similarly for a while and decided, because I made like a birthday cake, which is this.
Mm.
It's like a funfetti cake with a matcha icing. And I found these like keto sprinkles on Amazon, which seem like the best ones you could find. They're sugar-free sprinkles. I forgot what it is. So
Wow.
well, I don't know.
That is so
I'll tell you
good.
what it is.
Is there
But
ghee in the frosting? You can taste a little bit of like
there's ghee in the frosting and coconut cream.
oh my God.
So both good fats. And then for this cake, and the reason why that one is so moist is because I started using sour cream in the cake,
Whoa,
which
interesting.
really gives it like a nice, amazing moisture. And
Wow.
you know, there's no sugar in sour cream, so
I mean, that is
still keeping it
hyper
keto.
palatable.
And I'm not keto by any means, but I do make a bulk of my desserts that way, especially the recipes online, because as quote unquote like sugar-free chef, a lot of people are asking for like full on like low carb keto stuff. But I do love cassava flour. I think that, and I use it in my cookies, and I think it's a great addition to it, especially if you can digest if you use carbs well. It's a great addition to like the baking family because it's a root vegetable, and you can cook it. You know, you can heat it.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, I'm not like explicitly chronically in ketosis either.
No,
but
of
I
course
will,
not.
but I still default to keto desserts because they're gonna, by definition, they're gonna be free of refined grains.
Yeah,
So
because there's not really a lot of other things. There's no like middle ground in that world.
yeah, there really isn't.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not gonna reach for low fat desserts.
No.
You know, so I'd much rather reach for low carb desserts.
Yeah.
You know, and because keto kind of comes with it, like if you're aware and seeking out products that are keto approved, you're probably aware of like, you know, you're probably avoiding grain and seed oils. You know, there's probably some overlap in other nutritional philosophies that are going to make that product something more likely, you know, something that I'm going to want to put into my body.
Right.
You know?
Of course.
So wait, what the hell are these?
So then
We've got like a whole other box here.
So the chocolate chip is still the traditional chocolate chip, which you've had plenty of. But dude, check this white chocolate out.
Wait, how'd you make the white chocolate?
Well, I found a white chocolate chip company that's making
like sugar-free?
Yeah, it's a sugar-free white chocolate, and it's decent. They do use a little bit of, I think there's it's not whole milk, but they use like whey or some type of dairy to make the white chocolate, which I'm fully in support of dairy, especially raw dairy. I love it. I know there's not a lot of dairy fans out there that probably listen to your podcast but yeah, I mean, I drink raw goat milk till the cows come home, till the goats come home.
Dude, I'm open-minded to dairy. I consume dairy in moderation, but I think it's hard.
Ice cream? Will you eat dairy ice cream, or will you go for like a coconut flavored one?
You know what?
Coconut ice cream.
It's taken me a while to come to this realization, but you know, I mean, it really depends on the ice cream. There are some really great vegan ice creams, and we've talked about this in previous episodes. A lot of those vegan ice creams are just pumped with chicory root fiber
and the gums.
And the
50
gums,
different gums.
But dude, you put
fiber.
like, you can easily, if you eat half a pint of some of these vegan ice creams, you're getting like 15 to 20 grams of chicory root fiber. You're going to need to quarantine yourself for another reason if you go through all that chicory root fiber. Yeah.
You're going to be bloated for like 3 days.
Yeah. Not only that, but like your bacteria is going to be, you know, gut microbiome is going to be in a feeding frenzy.
Oh yeah. Gas City.
Yeah,
you don't want that.
We always end up talking about
flatulence
on whenever you're here.
Yeah, no, there's
thing.
Also the other one I think we talked about last time was Smart Sweets.
Yeah.
Smart Sweets is they're literally fiber candies.
They're fiber candies.
If you look at the back, there's 24 grams of fiber in the package, and the package is like this big.
Yeah.
And you're like, how is that? It's literally just, I think it's just like gelatin and fiber.
Yeah.
With like sweetener.
My thoughts are that some of those fibers aren't true fibers. And I think we're going to find that out, that some of them, actually one of my followers who has a CGM tested Smart Sweets, and they caused their blood sugar to go like
through the roof,
super high.
No.
Yeah. So some of those quote unquote fibers don't act like fiber, meaning they actually do get absorbed in the small intestine and cause your blood sugar to spike. They act like carbohydrates. And then, you know, some of those other fibers, they do act like fibers, but like they're so pure and like they feed only one type, you know, of bacteria. And those are the ones that I feel like will cause you problems if you eat them in excess, because they're just out of balance with like the normal fiber matrix that is found in whole food, because they're like these isolates,
Oh yeah,
you know?
for sure. Can you tell when you are starting to have that spike, like in your body? Can you tell? Or because I think you started using that glucose monitor thing, right? Or you've tried it? When
I've
did you
tried the
try it?
CGM, yeah, from Levels. They gave me one.
Can you actually just intuitively feel when you are having a spike that's like out of your normal range?
I mean, I want to say yes, but I don't know. I mean,
I think I can.
you can.
Yeah. I'm pretty sensitive. So, and it's weird, I have them on with the strangest things. Like when I drink, like I usually on heavy lift days, I'll drink like a coconut water or like raw goat milk with like a protein powder and glutamine and glycine or whatever afterwards. Feel great, no
Hmm.
problem. But if I eat something strange, like something like that, where it's supposed to be
Yeah.
low sugar, low carb, but it has that like intense sweet, like they almost like overused stevia or monk fruit or something, and then they have other stuff in there that you just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Jittery.
jittery and
Yeah.
weird. Yeah, like I felt like something just made me feel like I just took like some kind of medicine that made me spike like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I feel like a lot of that community has demonized whole food carbohydrates and sugars that actually like over time of like having them in balance will actually help you become more flexible with carbohydrates and fats as your energy sources. And I think that's kind of the place where I think a lot of us want to get back to, is a place where it's like we're not restricting this whole side of the nutrient panel and losing out on all these things. And then eventually doing something so hardcore for so long and then being like, God, I have no energy, and trying to switch back to something and being like, whoa, that felt crazy. Like, I don't want to feel like that either. Like, oh God, I got to go back to like keto or whatever. But like, I think that's like the transition that I feel like I made eventually, where now like I eat white rice, I like sweet potatoes, I like white potatoes in all forms. I'll do cassava pasta. Like you look at the back of a cassava box of pasta, there's like 40 grams of carbohydrates per serving, which is a lot, but I feel great on it.
Hmm.
And I also know that at this point in my life, and getting back to like the whole idea behind understanding what really gives you energy, is one thing that helped me out that I finally got myself to, because I think I suffered from issues with my hormones when I went really like strict with food. And not to say like I was like in some weird dieting phase, but I just thought it was good for me to do certain things, right? Now that I'm open to a lot more food sources, uh I also got my hormones back to where they should be. And now they work for me way better. And so when I eat the carbs or when I eat the fats or when I'm absorbing these nutrients and using them as opposed to them sitting around or gaining, cortisol weight or insulin weight. Like I'm now just like absorbing the nutrients, using them and moving on with my day. And so it's interesting. I think that that's a big kind of what I'm getting to. I think that's a big thing for people. A lot of people are getting their blood work tested now and understanding that our male hormones and female hormones are a huge part of how we feel vital and how we actually absorb and use food, and how our thyroid and how important that is, and how a lot of people are either one way or the other, like hyper or hypo, like have sluggish or too sped up thyroid function. All of this comes back to their hormone health, right? So understanding, I think that's a big step for people to figure out, hey, what's really going on? Like get blood work done, like spend the money, go somewhere that you trust, get the blood work done, understand, so you stop guessing and stop thinking like, because then you become this guessing person that just wants to listen to who they think is like the smartest person out there. And they're like, oh, Max Lugavere is telling me to do this. Well, Max Lugavere is super smart, but maybe that's really working for certain people. But for them, they might need to change it a little bit. Or Crosby's telling me to do these things, or he really likes these supplements, but that didn't work for me. So really understand, get the blood work done, get your hormones tested, figure out, hey, what's going on with my testosterone, my estrogen, my progesterone, like all these things, my sex hormone binding globulin, like all these things make a huge difference. And then you're like, okay, now I understand. I have like a sheet to look at and go, okay, these are the things I need to work on. How do I do those things? And it becomes a little easier, I think. So that's a big thing. And we both get blood work done, no?
Yeah, I haven't gone in a while, but I do want to go. I'd be curious to see like what my, yeah, just all the basics. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm always interested in the lipid panel. I'm
Right.
not like a big, you know, I'm not like a big, what's the word? Like, I'm just not, I'm not worried or anything about like what I would never just look at like one number, like
Right.
LDL cholesterol,
Right.
and have that guide any kind of behavior or diet change, you know, without taking in the full view of other metabolic health markers, you know,
Yeah.
my fasting insulin, fasting glucose,
Sure.
CRP, you know, all the other things, HDL. Gosh, what is there? You know, my omega-3, omega-6 ratio.
Mhm.
But yeah, I am curious to see like what those are doing. Just given my genetic profile. I would also look at my homocysteine levels and all
Okay.
that stuff. But
Yeah.
um,
Wait, did you have one of these?
I had the white. Wait,
Oh, it disappeared. I was like, wow.
yeah,
Did he
I
eat
can't
this?
stop myself. Wait, Sydney, do you want to try one
Do
of
you
these
wanna-
cookies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Sydney, bring Sydney in.
Wait, do you have a fork?
Should she
'Cause you
try
could
the
try-
cake or does she want to try a cookie? What do you want? What she want to try?
Just grab a cookie, but then you have to try the cake.
I think that's a COVID freak fork. Just to let you know, I feel like it's COVID.
Can't
free.
share a fork with my assistant.
No, I know, but I feel like it's probably okay.
So good.
That's the chocolate chip. That's the classic one. I feel like that's going to be the first one. Well, I know that's going to be the first one to market because I actually got into a co-packing kitchen for the first time. Thank God.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and we cranked out a bunch of cookies as like a trial run. Everybody was awesome there, working with a company called Foodies, kind of in like Sherman Oaks area. But yeah, that's awesome.
You're a master. Sydney,
yeah.
the cookies are Sydney approved.
So good.
Thanks, Sydney.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I have all my wholesale ingredients dialed in. I'm working with awesome companies,
I love that.
and I'm at the stage now where I'm getting all the ordering forms ready to go and done, and then we ship everything to the co-packer, and we get the, you know, everything that I'm gonna package and ship there, and so there's some process. There's a process still left for, I think, probably, I'm hoping half this month, but it might take the full month to really get it launched. But yeah, I just keep feeling like it's going to be, oh, here. And then it's like, oh, it's like one of my suppliers is in Texas, and I was in great communication with them. And then all of a sudden, all the weather stuff happened in Texas.
Oh yeah, shout out to Texas, by the way.
Crazy, you know?
Love Texas.
Yeah. So sad. Yeah. So do I. They're doing some awesome things there.
They are.
And then boom, couldn't get a hold of them, and then, you know, like a week later they respond. I just feel so bad. It's like crazy. I mean, but I also know that's part of the business with having a food product is like understanding you might have to have multiple sources ready to go, because things like that, weather things will happen, and companies could get shut down or not be able to send out stuff. And so yeah, it's the trial and error of starting my own business all by myself. I have one other person that has like helping me with financial stuff, like not paying, you know, investing in anything, but more so just understanding the numbers.
Yeah.
That's it. And me.
Yeah, but you
So-
can't think about it like that. You got to think about you're not by yourself, because you've got like all of your followers have been
Sure.
waiting for this
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah.
You know, I get hit up all the time by,
I know.
you know, by my followers. Like, can you tell Crosby to like step on the gas a little bit? So, dude, you're not alone. And what is this that I'm about to try with the green frosting?
So the only thing about this is I made this like, I want to say 4 or 5 days ago, but I still think it'll be moist. This will be a test to see if it's still moist. This is a matcha. It's a keto matcha funfetti cake. There's sprinkles in the cake as well as in the icing, kind of like, you know, like the old school birthday cakes.
Yeah.
But I wanted to switch it up and do something a little different. So you have the matcha in there.
Wow. All
Great
right.
antioxidant value. Also some theobromine and caffeine happening.
So good.
Still good. Still
Mhm.
moist.
Still moist, yes.
Not as moist as this one though.
No,
This one's
but this is still good, and I
Still
love
good.
matcha. Matcha's great.
Yeah.
Theanine too, good for like the mood.
Yep.
So good.
Yeah. Awesome stuff.
I love
I'm
this,
happy with that one.
dude. You
Like
are
little square cakes on that one.
so talented,
Thanks, dude.
dude. If I could bake like this, Jesus.
What would you do?
Well, for one, I would be 400 pounds.
Do you think it would get you a girlfriend?
I mean, it might help.
It would help.
It might. I mean, you know, baking.
I just don't get it. You're literally like the last most eligible bachelor left in Los Angeles. Anybody watching this,
I'm holding out for the one.
I get hit up by girls on my Instagram that say, "Hey, I see you're really good friends with Max Lugavere. My girlfriend in New York thinks he's the most adorable, smartest man in the world. Like, let's set them up." That happens to me like once a month.
I don't know, some girls don't like cat guys, and I'm a cat guy.
That might be maybe an
That
issue.
might have something to do.
You're gonna have to find a cat lover.
I'm not really a cat guy. I mean, I have a cat that I love, you know, but
You're a cat guy. I
am I?
love your cat, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No. All right. I want to.
Anyways, let's get back to what we're actually talking about. We're getting a little sidetracked.
I feel like my listeners are gonna be like, Max, what the fuck?
What are we talking about? Your cat? Come on.
No. Okay. So let's talk about. So we've talked about many ways of boosting your energy levels, but you did mention earlier that extracting the nutrients and the energy from food, you know,
So
digestion
important.
is a major part of this, right?
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Well, so many phases of that, right? Like, first of all, eating foods that are easier to digest to start, especially if you're struggling with gut issues. You don't want to like be crushing broccoli and cauliflower that are, super fibrous and hard to kind of break down for somebody that's having gut issues.
Right.
Stick with, carbohydrates and proteins that are easier to break down, good fats that are easy to break down. That's kind of a early start for me, especially. Like, that's kind of one of the things that, especially in nuts too, we kind of talked about that.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like having a really good source of protein. I love red meat. I know you do. Big Bel Campo fans, loving all the red meat stuff. That's usually a big part for me. Figuring out that protein source for yourself, that really works. Some people love fish. Some people work really well with eggs. But those full amino acid forms of proteins, and then getting like those easier to digest carbohydrates in there in the beginning, especially if you're having gut problems. And if you're at the time, if you're going through those things, whether you're bloating or having gas or just really don't feel energetic when you eat food. God, I love a company called Bioptimizers. They have amazing hydrochloric acid products, masszymes, great enzymes, amazing probiotic. I've been using their stuff for well over a year now. Feel incredible. Like, I can totally tell the difference because they're so potent when I use the masszymes. I'll take 2 or 3, sometimes even 1 for a meal, depending on how big the meal is. But if I don't use it at times, it's not like I feel terrible, but I can tell that I'm really not breaking down that food as well. And that's because of my history with gut problems. So like, it lasts for a while. You don't just like all of a sudden go, okay, I stopped taking antibiotics and now I'm fine and I can digest everything. Like, there's a rehabilitation process that kind of lasts for a while, depending on how intense your issues were before. So I highly recommend, if you're having gut problems or if you just want to break down your food better, the combination of Bioptimizers has that masszymes, which is crazy for protein, high amounts of protease and all other amazing enzymes in there. But also hydrochloric acid is so important. And I think a lot of people are missing that part where they think, oh, I have acid reflux, I should take antacids and get rid of my acid. No, that acid reflux is telling you that you need more acid to actually close that stomach valve for you to actually start breaking down that food in your stomach. Because that's kind of what happens if you have adequate amounts of stomach acid. That food travels through, closes, because the stomach acid is actually where it's supposed to be. And then your stomach starts to create that, with the stomach acid, starts to break down that food for that first part of your digestive system. And then the mast zymes are kind of the next thing, right? They're going to break down and actually utilize and disperse those nutrients to where they need to go. Another thing is if you're super B vitamin deficient, one thing you should look at is your stomach acid, because that's one thing that your body actually absorbs and utilizes more efficiently when you have the adequate amounts of stomach acid are B vitamins. And that's one of the greatest sources of energy you're going to get from food is those B vitamins. You're not going to feel ready to go. You're going to feel sluggish and be like, oh, because the food's just sitting around waiting to probably pass at your stool the next day, right? As opposed to actually being able to use it for energy. So love, I know you like those guys too. I mean, I love that company. Love what they're doing for digestive health. And it not only has helped me, but my family, my brother, my mom, also my girlfriend. She likes to take the stuff. The probiotics are amazing too. So it's one of those things that I love to talk about because I think digestive health obviously is super super important when we're talking about getting energy from stuff. And a lot of people are having issues with their digestion because there's just we're overly being bombarded by toxins, environmental toxins, and estrogenic toxins, estrogens, plastics, and all that. So everything's kind of like there's a lot of things against us right now in our world, and probably because we don't treat it so well. So it's kind of karmically coming full circle around back to us. But individually, you could do something about it, right? You could be like, okay, I'm going to start hacking my digestive energy and figure out, hey, there's something I'm missing. And maybe it's listening to this conversation and going, oh, whoa, I bloat a lot. Like maybe I'll try the hydrochloric acid because that might help me not bloat anymore. And you might just think about it in a more vanity perspective at first. But then once you realize that it's like also helping you absorb nutrients and you're feeling better and you actually can talk to somebody after you eat and have energy to do things, then you're like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel when I eat food. And I didn't feel like that for a long time. I did feel sluggish. I did feel the brain fog. I did have bouts where I just wanted to take a nap during the day. And I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just ready to like get on to the next thing until I'm ready to go to bed at my bedtime, which is normally like 10:30, and I'll get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock every day. So I have like a lot of day that I use and I feel good most of it. And I attribute a lot of it to being able to actually absorb the food that I'm eating.
I love that. I occasionally hear of people, people will reach out to me on social media that they've started, maybe they had been vegetarian or even vegan, and they've started integrating like properly raised, animal proteins into their diet, like, grass-fed beef or something. And then they say that it upsets their stomachs, like they don't digest meat well, right?
All the time I
It's
hear this.
like meat intolerance is very rare. I believe, and I don't quote me on
Very.
this, but like, Lyme, like there are certain like acute conditions that can cause that. But generally, like nobody is, intolerant to no, or should be intolerant to meat. So that's a really interesting point that you just made me think
It's
of. That
such a low toxic food. That's why.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's such a nutrient dense food and plays such a
Exactly.
pivotal role in our evolution. So if you're not tolerating meat, it could very well be due to a lack of appropriate levels of hydrochloric acid in your stomach,
Exactly.
or protease enzymes,
Yes.
or what have you. Before I started working with Bioptimizers, there was like a brief period where I felt like my digestion was not working super well, and just as a hunch, as a hypothesis, I was like, maybe I need to, maybe I should go out and buy one of these like HCl supplements. So I went to Erewhon, I bought a bottle, and I started taking it with my meals for like that period, and I definitely like
Saw a change,
there was a
right?
noticeable
Yeah.
improvement. Yeah.
That was one of my big like aha moments too when I started using HCl years ago. And dude, it's night and day.
Mm.
Every person that I've ever worked with has come to me and say, "Hey, can you help me put together like a diet plan, supplement plan, whatever?" Like 95% of the people are like, "I get bloated and this and that," and a lot of them have come from like heavy plant-based lifestyles. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but over time, if you're not consistently eating foods that require acid, stomach acid to break down, which are going to be the more of these like animal proteins, your body, like anything else, will stop producing those things because it's like, oh, we don't need it.
Yeah.
We don't need to produce as much stomach acid as before because we're getting basically only things that we need to break down with amylase, the carbohydrate enzyme. That's it. We're eating a lot of plants. We're eating a lot of carbohydrates, and that's it. So that's why it's like so key to like, okay, I'm going to add meat back into my diet. Add meat back into your diet with HCl and enzymes and go from there. And then taper off at some point. Maybe you won't need as much. I know some people that'll start with like 4 HCl per meal and they're not even eating that protein, but they so notice a difference. And then all of a sudden now it's like you hear from them like 6 months later, they're like, oh, I only take like 1 HCl. Like I've kind of gotten my, stomach acid back to where it should be. And I feel great now. So those are big things digestive wise. I also love, they have a product called P3OM that I love too, that I take as a probiotic supplement at night. And that's kind of like my main. They have a leaky gut guardian product too that's awesome. I'll drink that in the mornings. Not to say I think I have leaky gut anymore, but it's just got that you're just still crushing all these desserts.
This is why I love and hate you, Crosby, because I've eaten this entire freaking cake.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I'm just gonna hold on for a pause so that everybody can hear you too.
This is why I'm not Crosby % body fat. Because you didn't even touch your products here.
Well, because they're at home. I eat them all the time.
You don't though.
I do, I swear to God.
That's a lie.
I promise. I swear on everything. I swear on my family, everything. Of course I eat them. There are certain things that I don't love taste-wise. Like I'm not really a matcha fan, so I didn't really have much of this. I tried it and that was it. But I love my chocolate chip, the white chocolate I crush at home.
So
I made a
good.
maca butterscotch cookie the other day that's like maca-based cookie with little lucuma, mesquite, and then I found these like butterscotch chips. And it's my girlfriend's new favorite. One of my good friends, they're all like raving about it. I don't love it because I don't love butterscotch.
Yeah.
So I don't really eat it. But like, I'll never turn down a white chocolate chip cookie. I love those.
I can't tell you the last time I had white chocolate.
They're so good, right?
So good.
It's like a sugar cookie with a little white chocolate taste. I'm into that one probably the most, but I know that people are going to love the chocolate chip most. So that's going to be first. Snickerdoodle is also one of my favorites.
Crowd pleaser.
I love all cinnamon stuff. So I'll stick to that kind of stuff. But dude, we also got questions.
Oh my God, we got some audience questions?
Well, remember earlier I posted something on my Instagram and I asked people, I don't know how to do this. You go to...
I'm so excited for this. Oh my God.
You go to like where you asked it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here it is, yeah.
Oh my God.
See all.
Audience questions from Crosby's Instagram?
Well, you also sent people to ask questions.
Are they for both of us? Are they for me? Are they
somebody said, can I be on Max's podcast one day?
Sure.
He says sure. Okay, here's a good question. Working out while fasting. Yes or no? Are you a fan of working out?
I'm going to say I am a fan. I'm also a fan of working out not fasted, but I would say generally I really enjoy a fasted workout. What about you?
Are you doing that like first thing in the morning kind of thing where you haven't had any food at all, or you're waiting, like you eat and then like hours later in the day you'll work out, you'll train like more like 3, but you haven't eaten since like 11 or something?
No, I generally enjoy like the morning, like 10 a.m. workout.
Yeah.
Where I can make sure that when my workout ends, I can run to get some protein.
I think we're the same there.
Yeah.
I love that feeling.
I've kind of gotten into that rhythm thanks to you, because of you, because that's kind of what you were doing. And I enjoyed having lunch with you and working out with you. And
it makes for a nice day to like do that. Mine's kind of a long fast, but not really. Cause I'll wake up 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll have a bulletproof coffee. I still love drinking bulletproof coffee. And I put a little bit of protein in there. I'll use some collagen protein and get my good fats in there. And I'll put some lion's mane and some other stuff, but I usually don't work out until like 10 or 11 sometimes. So I have that window, like, even though I had something, it's not a lot, it's just a drink. So I have like 4 hours in between that I'm like doing a lot of work, or maybe I'll bake something. And then I like to make like a pre-workout drink. of like amino acids, essential amino acids with like creatine, and throw some pine pollen in there and
This
all
is your
sorts of
this is your pre-workout.
my pre-workout.
Because we're
Yeah,
talking
if I actually
energy
put-
this
yeah,
episode.
We're talking the energies. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I actually put my pre-workout list on my Instagram, people would just like roll their eyes at me. And I work, all these companies are so awesome. I work with a bunch of them, and some, a good majority send me stuff. So it's not like I'm buying. Everybody's like, that's a $400 workout drink. And I'm like, well, maybe it is if you bought all the ingredients in one day.
Yeah.
And threw them all in there. But over time, over a month of using Schizandra or Astragalus, and then throwing in the essential amino acids, and you don't have to make these like crazy hyper powered drinks, but I mean, I like to do it because it's there.
Yeah.
I have it. So I will put Cordyceps, Astragalus, Schizandra in my drink along with chlorophyll and, the essential amino acids and creatine and pine pollen, Hoshawu, sometimes Makuna. Like, I just like to switch things up and try stuff and see what satiates me the best, see what makes me feel great for my workout, see what gives me the best pump. Or the longer, if I do a hike, like a 2 or 3 hour hike, I'm obviously going to put something in there a little bit different than if I went and did a workout for 40 minutes at the gym.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. Still kind of feel slightly fasted because I haven't really chewed on anything yet. I'm not like, all these are just drinks.
Yeah.
So I'm breaking them down really well, and they're going straight to my bloodstream. And then I'll have like a protein shake right after my workout and then eat a meal.
Yeah.
And I feel great doing that. And then I'll eat like a lot from that 1 o'clock to like 9-ish is when my window of like, I'll eat a good amount of food and then kind of do it all over again the next day.
Love it. Let's go through 5 more questions, but like we'll do them like kind of rapid fire. But yeah, and then read the when you read the question, also read the.
Oh yeah, that working out fasted was from Julie Rodriguez.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for that question. Julie.
And then
but make sure you
nourishing
pick
Nelly wants to be on your podcast.
Nourishing.
Yeah, she asked that.
Whoa, Nelly.
I'll be on your podcast. Let's see what else we got here.
So many.
Having so much troubled sleep. Any tips? From Susie Rogers.
Susie Rogers. Troubled sleep. I would say my rapid fire take here is to build up your, check in and make sure that you're building up adequate sleep pressure over the course of the day. So making sure that you're active and you're exercising. Cut out the late day caffeine and make sure that your room is dark and cold.
Nice.
Yeah. Those would be my
cold,
3.
I love a cold room.
Same.
I open my window like around 6 and just like let it just marinate in freezing cold temperature.
I love that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I get in there and I'm just like, that's when you want to wrap up in the blankets.
Yeah.
My girlfriend will like yell, it's so cold in here. I'm like, it's amazing in here. I'll like joke with her too. I'll like walk back there like 9. And I'll be like, babe, it's amazing back there. It's like literally the Arctic back there. It's like we could be in an igloo. And she's like, oh my God, no, it's gonna be so cold. I'm like, no, it's gonna be amazing. We're gonna have so much fun just trying to cuddle up in that.
So funny.
Yeah, you have to have that. I mean, I think they said something like 62 degrees, 63 degrees. Is that like optimal sleep temperature?
I think 68 is what I tend to recommend.
68? Oh.
No.
I like it cold.
I mean, I could go colder, but I think 68 is a good temp to strive for. All right. Number 2.
Lots of people asking when I'm going to ship the cookies.
All right.
So we'll just say really, really hoping to get them out by the end of this month. When will you ship your cookies internationally? From Samantha Castillo. So Samantha, hopefully this month we'll be shipping them out.
And this month is March.
March.
Yeah.
Here's a good one for you. How to get out of a consistent brain fog. From this person has a TJ Freed 3.
TJ Freed 3. How to get out of a consistent brain fog. Well, I mean, the first thing that I would do, I would, and this is not medical advice. I'm not a medical doctor. I always like to preface my, any kind of brain related advice with that. Uh, I think it can be useful to see a neurologist because sometimes there are medical causes of brain fog,
Yep.
right, that you want to rule out. But generally, I find making sure that you're getting good, adequate sunlight first thing in the morning to anchor your body's circadian rhythm, get that spike of serotonin, which is important for executive function. You could say that like having good executive function is sort of the opposite of brain fog. Um, I mentioned exercise, making sure that your diet is not, full of high glycemic carbohydrates,
Right.
making sure that your blood sugar is like nice and
Blood sugar
even
is a
keeled
big,
throughout the day.
big part of it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that blood sugar spikes are deleterious, but it's the dips and the withdrawal that I
Mm,
think can create feelings of brain fog for people. So for that reason, I think it's probably wise to minimize glycemic variability in your dietary choices.
mm.
I hope that answers that question.
What can you do to improve your energy? And I think I hear people talking about eating healthy, but I didn't realize that that gut bacteria is actually always talking to your immune system and always talking to your hormones and always talking to your brain. And that can, so what we eat can actually fight burnout or fight fatigue. And I think people don't make that connection. And then I realize that when we are eating is also making a big difference in our bodies. So when I started to get into intermittent fasting, I started to think, okay, but I get this whole intermittent fasting thing, but when are you really supposed to eat and not eat? Because nobody tells you that. You're just supposed to fast for, say, 16 hours. What I learned is that Nobel Prize in Medicine went to the researchers behind how circadian rhythms influence our biology.
Mm.
And what we should actually be doing is fasting when our bodies need to rest, meaning our gut bacteria, our every cell in our body, and we should be eating and working and, seeing light during other hours. And it's not just in our brain, it's not about sleep, it's about metabolism, it's about longevity, it's about feeling good, performing well. So I was like, this is a no brainer. I mean, I don't understand why I never knew about this. So I really just very simple steps started cleaning up my routine, my nighttime routine, and my daytime morning routine. And I started to see a big difference in my energy. I mean, we can all anecdotally say when you spend more time in nature, you just feel better, but I had no idea what the gravity of the change would be. So I started to clean up my morning routine, my nighttime routine, and then I started to do this kind of circadian style intermittent fasting. And that's how I really started to build my plan because once I found stuff that was starting to work for me, I started to try it on other people. And then that's why I wrote the book because I thought these are really easy things that all of us could be doing every single day. And you can, there's no reason you can't fast more. You can add in longer fast, but really doing a simple overnight fast is a great starting point for most people who are feeling tired or burned out.
And most people already do that anyway, right?
Yeah.
While they're sleeping.
Exactly. So you're really adding the crazy thing is, Max, that people eat 16 hours a day. If you look at the data, we're eating 15 and a half, 16 hours a day because of this food addiction that we have, the metabolic, the broken metabolism, these companies that hijack our brains. We're craving, we're eating. So we're literally only taking a break for 8 hours. So even if we increase that break to 13, 14, 15 hours, we're doing a big service to our bodies. And so this is something that should be a part of our normal culture. It's not deprivation, it's not a fad, it's not, a trigger for, other like eating issues. Of course, because we live in diet culture, if there is someone who's dealing with eating disorders, I do have to say any of these things can be a trigger. So please don't try anything if you feel triggered by something like even an overnight fast. You have to heal yourself first before you kind of go into that. But other than that, I think every single other person can do an easy overnight fast for you know, 12 hours sounds like nothing, but it's a big change from the 16 hours that you're eating on a daily basis. So little things like that. Like I realized, wow, I usually I thought I have to eat every 2 hours to keep my metabolism going. And I would eat all the way till the time I went to bed and then roll out of bed and start eating because I thought I have to get it going. But I realized that that was the wrong opposite of what you should be doing.
Has that been has that concept been conclusively put to bed at this point that you don't need to eat every 2-3 hours to?
It's still something that trainers tell their I see people all the time getting that advice from
Hmm.
trainers because in our world, we are always talking about grow and, more muscle and more growth. So if you're trying to get more muscle or get fatter, then yeah, you should be spiking your insulin every 2 hours, right? So you could become a bodybuilder and not eat any bad foods and maybe grow the muscle selectively, but you're also growing fat cells, right? So for the common person who is just working out and working with the trainer, the eating 2 hours every 2 hours advice is horrible advice, especially when they are already metabolically challenged in other ways. So,
That's super interesting. Have you? I'm assuming you've been to Vegas at some point in your
yeah,
life. It's amazing when you walk through the catacombs sometimes of those resorts, in the mall areas. You have no concept of time,
yeah,
like in those environments, right? They purposely do that.
yeah,
They purposely do that so that you feel the same degree of energy, whether it's
yes,
noon or 4 in the morning.
yeah,
And I feel like that's a good metaphor for how our brains must feel and our bodies
yeah,
must feel. The organs of metabolism must feel today. In this kind of food environment where and this light environment where we're just not receiving cues properly in accordance with ancestral biology.
yeah. It's like being hungover. I mean, you know that feeling. Have you ever been hungover? You know that feeling of a few
Are
times in
you
your life?
asking me? Many,
Yeah.
many times.
So that feeling of you feel exhausted, but it's more than exhaustion. It's like this brain fog and it's this moodiness and it's these like there's all this other stuff going on besides just feeling tired. That's how our bodies feel all the time. We're jet lagged and we're feeling exhausted because the crazy thing is at night, our body is even more sensitive to light and food because they're trying to figure out like, okay, should I stay up? Is there an emergency? Is he running away from some danger? Because it has to stay hyper vigilant if that's the case. And when we're blasting ourselves with blue light and eating and doing all kinds of things, the body's registering that, okay, we need to stay up because there's something bad. Repair and renewal is paused, and we do not turn on those genes because we're thinking that the body needs to stay awake because we need to run away. There's some kind of emergency situation. So we're really shortchanging our repair and renewal processes when we're doing all of this. And I always say, like, if there's smart entrepreneurs, these tech people, can't we figure out ways to actually change technology? Like in the last 10 years, that's when we've all been doing all these bad things. I hope that in the next 10 years, we can figure out ways to decrease the amount of blue light we get at night and maybe increase the amount of natural light we get during the day so that we can actually take control of our bodies and get more energy and like not shortchange ourselves and accelerate disease, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we have like the night shift settings on our phones, right?
Yeah.
Which people have told me that that's actually not that effective, although it feels effective because the
Yeah.
minute you take it off night mode,
Yes. It feels like, oh my God,
you're
it's so
like,
bright.
whoa.
Yeah.
So I use that, but so I feel like that's like sort of a halfway measure. I wish my TV would do that as well. I don't know why big TV manufacturers haven't
They
figured
should
out.
do that. And
Yeah.
then the other thing is ambient light in the room. So I didn't know that, having ambient light in the room is really a metabolism killer. So they had in the weight loss studies, they've very well established that people that sleep with ambient light have more trouble losing weight when
Hmm.
they do diet studies than people who sleep in a dark blackout room. For me, it's like that's the easiest measure. I mean, that's free for most people. You could wear or very inexpensive. You could wear a face mask or eye mask. These are things, I mean, we're trying all these diet pills and all these shortcuts. Like, why not do things that are actually 100% effective in helping you lose weight or help your metabolism?
I agree. Guys, if you need a good eye mask, we make them. Shameless plug for Genius Life merch. You can go
Oh,
to
yeah.
thegeniuslife.com. We have an eye mask. No, but so I want to ask you a question because this came up. My assistant, Sydney, asked me this recently about blackout curtains. So I love blackout curtains, but when you wake up, the thing that I don't like about blackout curtains is that it keeps the room pitch black
Yeah.
in the morning,
Yeah.
and I would much rather wake up with the sun,
Yeah.
so that you get that light in the morning as you're supposed to, as our
Yeah.
ancestors arose with the rising of the sun, right? So are blackout curtains, would you recommend them, or do you think that there's like a better way to do this? Maybe,
I
I don't
think
know.
I think if we could think of a technology, I mean, we have so many cool people listening to this. If there should be curtains that just automatically sense light and open, right?
I agree with that.
That would be so amazing.
That would be amazing.
So what I do is I wear an eye mask, but the basic deal is that once you decide your nightly routine and you decide on the hours that you want to sleep, try not to have that alarm, blaring alarm waking you up. I mean, I know it's so hard for most people to do, but I think if you start at least a few nights a week, if you're able to sleep in a dark room and then wake up naturally and then immediately or shortly thereafter go get some sunlight, you're in good shape. So, what I do on most mornings as a part of this whole journey that I was on, I wake up in the morning and I literally go brush my teeth. I do kind of a little bit of a, wash up, change into my workout clothes, and then I step outside and I get the direct sunlight. So the sunlight you get through a window is 5 times less
Mm.
than what you would get in natural, even on a cloudy day. So you really do want that direct light. So we're talking about 10,000 lux even on a cloudy day and 100,000 lux on a sunny day, whereas a light gives you 1 to 2,000 lux. So turning on your lights in your room feels like, oh, I'm waking up, but it's really that natural light that you need exposed. It could be a minute. You just go outside. For me, oftentimes when I'm in a rush, I'm literally outside for a minute. I get my sunlight, I do a little self reflection, and then I'm off. And so, ideally on days I'm off, I do a workout outdoors. I mean, that's the best, right? You feel like $1,000,000 after that and then break my fast. But then a lot of times, and that's what I did during the pandemic. But then now that gyms are open, some outdoor spaces are open, then doing a fasted workout and then breaking your fast is something that I think has really been transformative in my energy levels.
Okay, so let's talk about fasting.
Yeah.
So you advocate for people starting with at least a 12-hour
hmm
fasting window and, compressing their feeding window. For most people, it's about 16 hours, which is insane.
Yeah.
And you're saying just make it 12 hours.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of orient your day then around that?
So 2 to 3 hours before bed, stop eating. That's kind of the big hard stop. You don't have to do it every day. I usually on the weekends spend time with friends or family, and you're eating late into the night, and that's okay. You don't have to make this an all or nothing thing because there's something to be said about social connections, as we know
Of
this
course.
year. But on weekdays, I really make a very, very um, boundary driven effort to end my meals 2 to 3 hours before bed. And then, so this is good for shift workers. 'Cause some people ask me, well, I don't get home till, midnight, whatever bedtime is for you, if you can work backwards. Ideally, that would be sometime after sundown.
Mm.
If you really want to go ancestral and biologically absolutely correct, you probably want to do it sometime after sundown and then fast overnight. And in the morning, if you can do a fasted workout in nature, that would be ideal because then you're getting that blast of sunlight into your retina, which goes to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which fine tunes all the cells in your body to say, like, okay, it's morning time, time to do metabolism, time to do thinking, complex tasks. When we're not getting that, we're always feeling kind of like down. Like that's why you need your coffee and your energy drinks because we're completely off.
Mm.
So then you do the fasted workout. One of the big advantages of a fasted workout is you can deplete your glucose. So most people in America are completely dependent on simple sugars as their fuel, right? And even if you're not, but you still have a good amount of simple sugars like stored in your liver. So, say you ate a pasta dinner, you're going to be burning that pasta all night long. And even in the morning, probably halfway through your workout, you're still burning that pasta, right? But if you have a pretty low processed sugar, processed carbohydrate diet, and you sleep overnight, and you're doing a fast 2 to 3 hours before bed, you're going to deplete a lot of that blood glucose. And then your body's going to dip into the liver stores. And once you kind of dip into your liver stores and you go for a workout, then your body's going to have to start to look for alternative sources of fuel. And that back and forth switch between using sugar for fuel and using fat for fuel is the magic of intermittent fasting. So, Dr. Matson in the New England Journal of Medicine study that came out in 2019 basically said it's not just about caloric restriction, because we know caloric restriction can be good for people, longevity, metabolism, but this is more than that. There is things that are happening. And when the metabolic switch happens, that's when BDNF goes up. That's when you see all these anti-inflammatory benefits. You see all these downstream effects similar to exercise. Like, exercise is not about just, the muscle. That's the benefit. There's all these global benefits. And that happens when you metabolically switch. So the concept that I take is we can't tell when you metabolically switch because you're doing it so rapidly back and forth. So one of the things I actually ask people to do is, if you are comfortable with doing an overnight fast, then stretch it a little bit by doing a workout, which rapidly uses up the stored glucose. And then you're going to dip into that metabolic switch zone, which is the magic. And then you break your fast and you go on with your day.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about any potential downsides of fasting? Because I've talked quite a bit about fasting as of late on the podcast, and I really value the time and vigor that you've put into your research.
Yeah.
And we haven't really talked about any potential downsides in the past, but you also being a woman, I think, can bring a new voice to this.
Yeah.
Are there any considerations that women need to have? Because I'm sure that you know this, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts as to why this is. But most of the research on fasting in humans, the clinical research, is done in men, right?
Yes.
Or postmenopausal women.
Yes.
So for premenopausal women that are listening, what are there any potential downsides to this?
Yeah, there's lots. Okay. But Max, I want people to think of it like they think of exercise. There are risks to exercise, right? You don't want to be running a ultra marathon. Not everybody can do that. And so same thing with fasting. Not everybody wants or can do a 3-day water fast or a 5-day, water fast. So that being said, you would never, ever tell a woman you shouldn't exercise because, oh yeah, there's this extreme form that could actually turn off fertility. That's exactly like intermittent fasting. Like you're actually confusing people and shortchanging people, those experts who say, oh, women should not fast, because that to people is now confusing. Now they're like, oh wait, I should go back to 16 hours a day eating because that was like better for me. But that's the disordered eating, right? And so the consideration that I tell people, women of childbearing age, is that you are wired differently than men. And this is a fact. We are reproductive creatures. And what our body does to protect reproduction is to shut off the ovulatory cycle when it senses a lot of stress. And that can be from mental stress, that can be from famine. You don't want to give birth during a famine or a time of major stress. So female athletes know this way too well. They train really hard. And if they don't have a good amount of rest in between or recovery, they will lose their period. And fertility, people who are trying to get pregnant will deal with this all the time because mental stress can also stop those ovulatory cycles. And that's what happens with fasting. If you tell your brain that you're in a famine, it will turn that off. And there's one study that people quote. It is a 6-mouse study, so very tiny study, where they had mice fasting, women, female mice fasting every other day for 12 weeks. And they found that there was an effect on the ovaries and reproduction. But remember, mice are so different than humans. Their metabolism is 6 times our metabolism. So for them, fasting for 24 hours every other day, that's like us fasting for 6 days.
Wow.
So this is not the same. You can't equate it. Yeah, if I fasted for 6 days in a row and did that for, months on end, I will definitely do a number on my hormones and many other things. So that's, I think, the real big take home message is you can fast. Just take it easy. Do not go deep and aggressive when you first start, because some people can, and many women will, text me, message me, and say, "I do great. I do the same thing as my boyfriend or husband, and they're doing great." But not everyone, and many women will notice that when they try to even do a 16-hour fast every single day off the bat, they're going to get hormonal effects. And I definitely felt that way. I saw somebody talking about fasting and the research. I was like, I'm all in. Like, I'm going to get an A plus. So I started doing it every single day. And literally by day 3, I felt fatigued. I felt like my sleep was disturbed. I felt like my cravings were on fire. And luckily I pulled back because I knew that something wasn't right. But some people keep going with it and they really damage their metabolism and their hormones in the long term.
So interesting. I really love that you brought sort of, you brought exercise into the equation, which is another form of hormesis, right?
Yeah.
Hormesis, which is, of course, beneficial stress.
Yes.
And it's up to each person, men and women, right, to figure out where that line is for them, right?
Yeah.
Where a stressor becomes too much stress. You got to walk that tightrope and discover for yourself, at what point, like where that stress is actually causing you to adapt in a beneficial way. And also, where it becomes counterproductive, where it becomes too stressful.
Well, that's exactly how exercise works, right? When I was really burned out, I was skimping on my sleep and I had a lot of emotional stress and like stress at work. And I would try to do these hard workouts early in the morning. And I was really shortchanging my results. I was like, I don't know, I feel like I'm getting like less in shape.
Mm.
And it was because I had so much baseline stress and I was just adding fuel to the fire, And so I talk about that in the book. Really, if you are in place of burnout and major stress, that's not the time to be doing aggressive workouts, whatever aggressive means for you. That's the time to pull back, maybe do some more nature based walks or yoga, and then get yourself in a better place, which shouldn't take too long. And then add those back in. So, the same thing, hormetic stressors are supposed to be good for you, but only if they're intermittent and they can't be constant and they can't have the volume turned on max because you can't add on other hormetic stressors then.
Yeah. I mean, fasting, exercise,
Yeah.
sauna, cold water
Yeah,
immersion.
exactly.
Sun exposure is
Yeah.
good for us in part because it's a sort of form of hormetic stress. And then you throw coffee into the mix, right? And then you throw psychological
Yeah,
stress. You
stress.
throw panic porn on the
Yeah,
media. You throw just
exactly.
all
I
the
love that panic porn.
yeah
Haven't heard that.
concept. I mean, it's so true. But you
Yeah.
throw that all into the soup, and suddenly you've got burnout, and you're wondering why.
100%. That's basically what happens. And we don't ever talk about it. Like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing all of those things at once. Get control over your baseline stress and then start adding in hormetic stressors selectively. And I think in the biohacking world, a lot of people try to do a million things at once. And I think we talked about it offline, but taking antioxidants, it actually is bad for you because it's really, there's a very fine balance that our body needs with um, antioxidants in our body, and adding more is just throwing that off. So just using these tools and understanding that they're really great all on their own, but maybe not in combination, and maybe you don't need to try everything that's available to you, and being a little more selective. So what I do is I try to stay in the crossroads of scientific evidence, um, ancient practices and nutritional therapies, so that it's, it doesn't mean that I'm always bound by the literature, but at least it's science informed. And so we're trying things that are, you know, things that we know will help us. Um, but maybe there's not a huge randomized controlled trial about it, but we are informed about how it works. Instead of doing the million things that we could be doing, me and you are both in the wellness space, we could literally be doing 100 things a day. And some of us are. And I just feel like the more I know, the more I realize that you have to be selective with what you decide to do with your time and energy.
Couldn't agree more. What about fasting and thyroid function? Does fasting suppress the thyroid?
So, same thing as exercise, right? Yes, it can if you do it in extreme amounts. But no, it won't if you are doing a simple overnight fast.
Hmm.
And of course, people with really labile thyroid, people with really labile insulin and glucose levels, they definitely have to work with someone because you don't want to be throwing all these hormetic stressors, even if it's a short one, without someone kind of monitoring your levels. But it's something that's very, very doable with any kind of hormonal issue. As long as that baseline hormone issue is fixed or you're getting treated for it, so that you're not throwing in a hormonal stressor, which is a hormetic stressor, not throwing that into the mix when you're still dealing with another one.
Yeah. So you mentioned people with that are prone to maybe disordered eating should definitely check with their healthcare provider, but also people that have, you know, like type 2 diabetes, things
Yeah.
like that.
If you're on exogenous insulin or, because this could really throw off your blood sugar levels and bring them down, which is a good thing for most people. But if you're trying to figure out how much insulin you should be taking, this is something you need to work with a practitioner, someone who's pregnant, breastfeeding. A lot of women contact me because they're like, "Oh, I'm pregnant, 20 weeks. What should?" And I'm like, "This is not the time to experiment with a fast because maybe you'll get it right, maybe you won't get it right, but you don't want to be playing around during this time. Go ahead and eat the way you normally do. And then when you are ready, then that's a time of self experimentation. You and I both just talked about it. Like everybody has different thresholds for what stress is for them. So you might be able to run a marathon, but I won't, or I'll need 2 years of training to get there. So that's not the time to experiment. And same with children. Those are the kind of the groups that shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. So when do you have your first meal in the day typically?
Okay, so I'm a breakfast fan. So unlike most intermittent fasters, I eat breakfast. This is delayed. And the reason why is that there's a big breakfast study that really clearly showed that the earlier your meals in the day, the better metabolic control you have. Makes sense, right? You when you eat meals earlier in the day, you have better metabolic control. So the way I do it is that I start earlier in the evening. If I want to push my fast a little bit, I start a little bit earlier. I'll start at 6 or 7 instead of 8. And then I'll push it to the next day. And so I'm having my breakfast around 10 or 10:30. And so it's still a breakfast. It's just later. And
Yeah.
some days I'll push the envelope. If I feel good, keep going, but I don't believe that you should be having your biggest meal at the end of the day. That's a cultural thing that we've built that's actually not beneficial for our bodies. If you infuse glucose into your bloodstream, and there's very good studies that show you will be able to control your blood glucose levels until about 8 o'clock.
Hmm.
And then the same amount of glucose infusion causes blood sugar spikes all throughout the evening. And so, what you're doing is, if you're having a huge load of food late at night, you're basically setting yourself up for metabolic disease.
Wow. That's shocking.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
that's crazy. And if you were going to eat a late night meal, would you say that it's then, or have a late night
Yeah.
snack? Would
Yeah.
you say that then the best foods to reach for are ones that are lower in?
Yes, glycemic index. Yeah.
Hmm.
You really want to reach for the nuts or, there's something that is not going to give you that insulin dysregulation because you're just better able to handle it during the day.
I know a lot of people like some almond butter before
Yeah.
bed or something
Yeah.
like that.
That's actually when I train people to fast, often because we're so used to eating all the time, it's really hard to get to bed. if you haven't had something in your stomach. So one of the tricks I tell is like if you can have a little bit of fat, even just 40 calories, that might hold you over for the night and it'll keep you in that metabolically fasting zone. I'm not talking about like thousands of calories of fat. I'm just saying a little touch of almond butter or coconut butter.
Hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
And so you're like a 10 a.m., 10:30
Mhm.
breakfast eater. What are you eating? What's that first meal consist
Okay.
of for you?
So
I'm getting
usually,
granular here.
yeah,
I hope
I
you don't
like
mind. I want to
it.
know. I
I
want to know
like
everything
it.
about your routine.
Yeah. So at in the morning, I'm usually post workout at that point. And I love my chai. And I talk about, I had no idea when I was growing up, but there's a lot of medicinal compounds that happen in Ayurveda that we have now found in all this literature to be the most anti-inflammatory foods on the planet. And so things like ginger, cardamom, cinnamon, are really amazing. I mean, they could be billion-dollar drugs. So I have a chai with those spices every day. And then I usually have something with fiber and protein because I'm having it post workout. So I time my protein to be right after the workout because that's when you can use it most efficiently. You can build lean muscle. And so I have it usually either it's a smoothie because I'm on the run, or so I say there's four S's: a smoothie, a scramble, a salad, or a soup are the four options that I usually reach for that have high fiber and that can have protein sources, right?
The four S's. Wait, say those again. The four
Uh,
S's of how to break your fast.
soup, scramble, smoothie, or salad.
I love those.
Yeah, like all four is like you can choose that as ways to break your fast at any time of day. And don't be shy about having a non-breakfast food for breakfast. I think that was something that I had to like break this mental barrier. Like I can't be eating a salad or like I can't be having a soup at 10:30 in the morning, but it's really fine. You will survive.
You know what I broke my fast with today?
What did you figure?
A ribeye.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What time was that? What
Because
time?
one day we're gonna be dead, right?
Yeah.
So you got to enjoy life, I think.
love
And
it.
I had
Just
it.
don't start it with a cupcake. That's all I ask because what ends up happening a lot when I was in training, I fasted by mistake a lot, in my medical training. And then I would come home and I'd be so hungry. And while I was trying to make the food that I was supposed to eat, I would be snacking on chips and I would have cookies and I would have all this sweet, fun foods because you're so starving. And by the time the real meal would arrive, I would already have eaten like 1,000 calories of very unhealthy stuff. And that's how a lot of people, when they accidentally fast, they'll eat a whole pizza, at the end of it. And so you can't out fast, just like you can't outrun your bad diet.
Yeah.
So people will say like, oh, I've been fasting, but I don't feel very good. Because what are you eating when you break your fast? Are you having, you know, 10 Twinkies to break your fast? And that's why you feel awful? You can't just use that as your sole treatment. And some people have, a couple of doctors actually said to me, this whole fasting thing doesn't work because there's a trial that just came out in JAMA and they took obese people and they asked them to fast but not change their diet. And they saw that they were able to out eat their intermittent fasting. So the intermittent fasting intervention helped them, but not significantly different than the traditional eating pattern. But as you know, with obesity and with how foods have hijacked our minds, you can literally eat 4,000 calories, even if you had a truncated amount of time, pretty easily in our culture, right? So you have to take that into account that these are obese. Like we know that there's lots of disordered eating, but definitely in certain populations. And if you take those populations and you say, well, sorry, you can't eat all day, but you can only eat for, 8 hours, they can easily eat all of that bad stuff in those 8 hours. So I do say that you can't just use it as your sole technique, but if you stick to the 4 S's, you're eating a clean diet, you are working on your baseline stress, that hormetic stressor can do wonders for you.
Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
A lot of people, they'll like do the work to get in a relationship and then they'll just kind of stop doing the work because they got the prize. They see the relationship as the prize. But I say that's where you really need to double down on the work, because in order to maintain a relationship, you really have to be self-realized to a certain extent.